The year 2026. Mr. President, what is your New Year's resolution? Peace on Earth. Yep, just 3 days into 2026, and with a supposed peace on earth New Year's resolution, President Trump launched an attack in Venezuela, capturing President Maduro and his wife. The Operation Absolute Resolve started around 2 a.m., where U.S. forces bombed infrastructure across northern Venezuela to keep air defenses down. The Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps were all part of the operation. The strikes lasted around half an hour, as the U.S. destroyed several buildings, warehouses, aircraft, and other infrastructure and defensive equipment belonging to Venezuela. Then, the U.S. Army's Delta Force, with intelligence from the CIA, broke into Maduro's palace, probably blasting Fortunate Son, and kidnapped Nicloas Maduro and his wife. They put Maduro on board the USS Iwo Jima. Not quite the average cruise, might I say. Still better than Carnival Cruise Lines, though. Maduro and his wife were later transferred to New York City, and are being held in the Metropolitan Detention Center. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that Maduro and his wife were charged basically with narco-terrorism, relating to all the supposed fentanyl coming into the U.S. from Venezuela. They both pleaded not guilty. Now there are a couple of questions to be asked of this situation, such as, is this legal? And why did Trump do this? Well, to answer the first question, there isn't really much precedent for this kind of action. International law prohibits the use of force in international relations except for some narrow cases, such as self-defense. In addition, the charges that Maduro are facing are related to drug trafficking, which does not rise to the level where an armed conflict would be justified. But let's be real with ourselves. When it comes to Trump, whether or not something is strictly legal, especially international law, doesn't really matter. Trump is going to do what Trump is going to do, and there's not really much anybody can do about it. Most people even agree that while this action may be illegal, the Trump administration won't really face any consequences for it. Now, one thing that is almost more bothersome to some than if this action violates international law is that Trump did not notify Congress before this. Now, he says that this was because of how secret the operation was and he couldn't compromise it. But that's a lie, because he told a bunch of oil executives about the plan. Yes, our elected Congress, of the people, by the people, for the people, does not need to be told about the U.S. playing Pokemon with a foreign president. But a bunch of scumbag oil executives? Oh yeah, they need to be informed. And this brings us to our next question. Why did Trump do this? Well, for this we have a pretty clear answer. Oil. Venezuela has the most oil reserves of any country in the world, and Trump wants that. Now, whenever a previous U.S. president has invaded a country for oil, they always try to give some other reason for it. Usually counterterrorism or democracy spreading. However, with Trump, he just flat out doesn't care, and will openly say that this was for oil. Everyone around him is trying to spin this in a counter-drug and counter-terrorism way, while Trump is just saying the quiet part out loud. I mean, at least it's refreshing. We don't have to pretend that this is something other than it is. The U.S. is taking all of Venezuela's oil, and if any other country has a problem with that, they can suck it. I mean, they have said that the U.S. will run Venezuela, whatever that means, and probably the people of Venezuela will maybe have their lives improved from this. And of all the foreign leaders to kidnap and put in prison, a dictator who rigs elections and has put a ton of his people in poverty isn't the worst one to do this on. However, if I were the Prime Minister of Denmark right now, I would be very worried.